Welcome to the Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast, brought to you by Focal Audio, the world's reference speaker. For over 30 years, Focal has been designing and manufacturing loudspeakers for the home, speaker drivers for cars, studio monitors for recording studios, and premium quality headphones. Visit Focal.com for more information. And now your hosts, Joey Sturgis, Joe Wanasek, and Eyal Levi.
Welcome to the Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast. I am Eyal Levi. With me is Mr. Joel Wanasek. Joey Sturgis. Hey. Yeah, Joey Sturgis is traveling again. He's on a plane somewhere. And with us is our wonderful guest, Mr. Kyle Black.
Hello.
Yeah, hello. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. We're excited to have you. Those of you who don't know who he is, you should know who he is. Worked with all kinds of awesome bands like 5 Seconds of Summer, Hit the Lights, Newfound Glory, Comeback Kid, All Time Low, Set Your Goals, Stick to Your Guns, State Champs, on and on and on and on and on.
Yes, sir.
And I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
You live in West Hollywood right now, right?
North Hollywood. I'm not that cool.
How do you get anything done living in LA?
It's tough. There's definitely a lot of distractions, but you just gotta stay in your cave and keep rocking.
Everyone I know from there who's in the music industry, pretty much, except for some producers, are out and about every single night. Like, every night.
That's crazy.
Yeah, going to shows is certainly a big part of living out here, and definitely one of the benefits, and certainly helps finds the acts I want to work with and all that stuff, you know. So I go to a show at least on average once a week.
Interesting. So are you from California?
Yeah. I was born in Chicago, but then grew up a little bit in San Diego, and then pretty much been growing up here in LA since I was 6 years old.
I was just say you're from by me. I'm from Milwaukee, so you know.
Oh, nice. Yeah, my whole extended family lives out there.
I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding. Milwaukee's all right. I like it.
Nah, it's great. Yeah.
I don't know, Joel. When I was just there and I was in downtown Milwaukee, it was kind of rough, but I don't know. Anyways,
what part of Milwaukee are you from?
Well, I grew up in a suburb called New Berlin, and now I live in a city called Menominee Falls, which is essentially just like North Milwaukee, you know, suburbs.
Cool. Right on. And Eyal, you're in Orlando, right?
I have a studio in Orlando, but I live in Atlanta.
Right on. Cool.
It's kind of a lot of travel.
Yeah.
I have a hatred for Florida, and I was involved with a studio called Audio Hammer out there for many years, did lots of metal records, and when I decided to do this stuff full time, was no longer with Audio Hammer, was like, well, you know what? I hate Florida. I am not going to live here anymore.
Really?
But then Andrew Wade offered me a room at his new studio, and I couldn't say no because...
Cool.
Because I couldn't, and the place is gorgeous. So,
yeah, so he doesn't really hate Florida.
No, I do, but it happens to be in the one neighborhood in Orlando that I think is really cool. It's in Winter Park, which is just as cool as any other cool area in a city. It's kind of like an oasis.
Nice.
Yeah, it's not as horrible as the rest of Florida.
Got it. Was it though the weather or like the music scene that kind of made you want to leave?
It's the weather. A lot of the people are just insane. The wildlife, like there's
You mean
just
that alligators,
bears, and insects.
Yeah, I don't get that. Okay, I think of bears, I think like forests and mountains and shit like that. When I was down there hanging out with Eyal, he was like, yeah, there's like, if you guys see a bear, don't freak out. That's common around here. There's, a couple miles up the road, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, bears in Florida? Like, what? That exists? That's a thing?
Oh, yeah.
Colorado, yeah.
No,
like
no.
Wisconsin, yeah. Russia, yeah. But Florida, what the fuck?
No, and these bears are not afraid of people. Like maybe last year, a lady maybe a mile away from my house got dragged out of her garage by a black bear. They let her go for some reason. But it's just like the weather there is oppressive. Plus, if you're recording for about 6 months out of the year, you have to unplug your rig because storm season happens. And Orlando is the lightning capital of the U.S.
Yeah.
And actually getting your building struck by lightning is not a weird thing. Like, these things, it happens out there. So for about 3 hours a day, you just literally need to unplug everything.
That's crazy and sucks. Big time.
The clients hate it.
Right. Does Wade even is Wade have to do that in his studio as well currently?
Well, I know that his intern texted me once and was like, hey, we've got to unplug everything. Can I unplug your computer? When I was in Atlanta, and I was like, yes, please. Like, right. I'm not going to even argue with someone in Florida who says we need to unplug your shit right now.
Right.
Please take it outside, hold it over your head, put a metal rod and attach it, and just scream to the heavens.
Dude, like, you know when you see, like, maybe on your Facebook feed, those, like, someone is sharing, like, a video of, like, the most insane lightning strikes ever, or, like, that kind of stuff, like Weather Channel shit. That is kind of how it gets quite often over there.
Right.
So, yeah,
I feel super lucky to live where I'm at. The weather out here is great most of the time.
Don't you get earthquakes and shit like that out there?
Dude, I can't wait. It's coming, the big one. It's been a long time.
Get your own island.
Yeah. Go surfing on California.
Right. You know, it's been about like 10, 15 years since like a serious earthquake hit, and on average they come about 10 years or something. So it's coming, and I'm pretty stoked for it. I got my speakers all tied down, and
oh, really?
You know, oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm not really joking about this. It's gonna happen.
I believe
soon.
it. My family, half of my family's from Mexico City, and they got lots of earthquakes there. So I'm aware. I'm aware of it. So you actually have your speakers tied down?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
that's smart.
Only for that, really. Because it's going to happen, but
it will happen. So that is smart.
Is there like a special insurance binder for that?
Yeah. I mean, in my current spot, I don't have insurance on this stuff, but at my new spot that I'm working on right now, I will have insurance, and they do have like a, earthquake clause kind of thing that, stuff gets covered if there's an earthquake for sure, because it's a serious problem.
I mean, in Florida, you have a hurricane clause as well. Like,
right.
Only an idiot will not get that taken care of.
Right.
Even though Florida hasn't been hit by a serious hurricane in a long ass time, everyone knows it's going to happen.
Sure.
So same sort of thing.
Just a matter of time, yeah.
So I have an LA question for you.
Yeah.
Being that you're, for all intents and purposes, you're a native. And you know very well that LA is kind of the target city for a lot of people who want to make it in the industry.
Sure.
Especially not just people from the U.S. who migrate there, people from all over the world when they say they want to make it in music, whether it's production or a band or anything else. Right. LA is kind of, LA, Nashville, New York. Do you recommend that people move to LA to pursue a career?
I think they should move out here if they're really ready to do it 110%. I mean, the rent out here is insane. You really got to work your ass off to be able to make ends meet. And on top of it, there's the amount of other guys out here doing what I'm doing is kind of, off the charts. Like, there's tons of competition, and, you just got to be really killing it and kicking ass if you're willing to step over here into the jungle.
How did you manage to differentiate yourself, or how did you set yourself apart and get recognized amongst all that competition?
Yeah, I think it's just determination, just being passionate about what I'm trying to do, and the kind of bands that I want to work with, I think was really important. I was in a band that helped me meet a lot of producers that I learned from and mentored from. So I would say that location had a part to do with it, and I had some good mentors along the way that I bugged constantly and tried to help them out as much as I could, and would do anything for them, and those opened up a lot of doors for me, and a lot of the credits you see are, products of just kind of being around the right people at the right time. You know what I mean?
So those mentors, did they give you gigs, or did you impress them and then you worked through them, or did you work with bands under them?
A lot of it was hey, let me help out on this record. Let me tune some vocals. Let me edit some drums. Let me edit some guitars. Let me set up some microphones. A lot of it was just that, you know, and then it would turn into, you know, mix gigs maybe if I had the opportunity. Like, for example, one of my main mentors was Mike Green, where my first job for him was tuning vocals on a Set Your Goals record, and then tuning vocals on this Boys Like Girls live thing. I loved the work that he was doing, so I pursued him as best I could without being annoying.
How did you manage to pursue him without being annoying? Like, how did you not punish him and just get him to ignore you?
So it helped that I was in a band that worked with him.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so that was definitely a solid in. You know, so we co-wrote some songs with him. My old band was called Neural, and then we co-wrote with a lot of guys on that particular record, but Mike Green was just the guy who got it the most. So anyways, we spent a lot of time with him, and then in that time I got to know him, and I just told him, I'm like, yo man, this is what I do, because I had been recording and producing since I was a kid, recording in my own band and stuff like that, you know what I mean?
So what happened that he actually trusted you though enough to try it, or did he just say fuck it?
No, that was it. It was just my kind of persistence, you know, on, hey, let me help you out. I think I remember bugging him like often, maybe once a month or something, until he actually had an opportunity for me to do some work for him.
Let me stop you right there. You just said often and once a month at the same time. And the reason I want to say that is because I've been punished by people every week, and it gets so annoying. And
oh my God, hourly sometimes.
Yeah.
Really?
Every day.
By the same guy?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well,
I mean, you try to be nice, but come on, like, I got to get work done too, right?
Right. Well, I don't know. I mean, that is a lot once a week. I mean, at a certain point, you can identify someone who's just kind of crazy, but then you can also kind of, you know, if you have an opportunity to meet up with someone for coffee or something and learn about what they're all about, then it might be worth, you know, saying hi to these guys and seeing what they could do for you, you know. But hourly is a lot. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I have definitely made business partners and hired people only through the internet and through their persistence. But it's usually been once a month sort of thing where they're persistent in that they will hit me up. And if I say, I'm too busy right now, but I would like to talk to you, hit me in a few weeks or hit me after this project's over, they actually respect that. They realize I'm not just some like possession of theirs or some thing they're trying to acquire or some quote unquote contact. I'm actually a human being who's got a life and a schedule and pressure.
How dare you?
Yeah, crazy, right? And they respect that, and then they will hit me back weeks later or a month later, and I appreciate that. And usually it's been those guys who are persistent but respectful.
Exactly,
I end up giving them an opportunity.
Yeah. For sure. Those are the guys.
Definitely.
Sometimes it takes 6 months, too.
The guys that end up working with me are, you know, in an intern type of scenario, or are those kind of guys where they're, like you said, just persistent enough to know that you can identify that they're serious, but just not kind of kooky.
Kind of kooky is a good way to put it.
Yeah, interns are an interesting topic. I mean, I guess by the time people hear this, it'll be dated, but I did a Facebook Live last night for like 2 hours, and I went on like a 30-minute rant about interns, and I've taken on a few and had a few come and go this year.
You just had one quit.
Yeah, I just did have one quit, correct. It wasn't for her, I guess. I showed you the email, actually. I mean, it's a tough business, and sometimes people really don't understand that it's not about what you're particularly doing in the short term. It's about the bigger picture, the people that you're going to meet, the opportunities that are going to present themselves. Right. And they don't really think about that. So it's okay. I mean, you know, this isn't for everybody.
Joel, if I was 22 and I wanted to be a producer or work in the industry and I was interning for you, I would give it 3 years of cleaning toilets before I was like, well, you know what?
Well, I got an opening every Friday if you're interested.
Fuck Wisconsin, bro. I'm not moving there. But I'm just saying that I would, like, at that point in my life, if I had the ability to get into a situation that was as connected as you are and with people as awesome as you know and just everything going on, I would have killed for that opportunity. So it just blows my mind. But hey, it's not for everyone, and it's good to realize that.
To add to everything that you guys are saying, I think it's just important to know that when, if you're looking for an internship and trying to be a producer, trying to be a mixer, I think that, you know, you should know that you shouldn't be interning with someone to, like, the end all be all is not to get a paid job, really. I think it's to help out and learn from the guys in exchange for your service, doing whatever they need you to do. And then, so I guess what I'm saying is, on the side, you should always be pursuing your own career, because in the end, no one really wants to be an assistant. You know, they want to be their own guy, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, most people. But the thing is, I let all my anger out last night towards the situation, so I'm really calm right now, which is actually kind of disturbing me because I was really on a tirade. What I wanted to talk about here about this, Kyle, is let's talk about the qualities of what makes somebody stand out as an intern, because I feel like this is something we've talked about before, but is so damn important. And no matter how many times I say it, it's never enough. And I'll tell you a little bit a story here as a precursor. You know, I can't tell you how many people have come into my studio. Now I'm gonna get mad here. How many people have come into my studio and looked me in the eye and said, Joel, this is what I want to do. I'm passionate about this. I can be great at this. This is all I do. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. You come in here and you show me and you stick it out for a long time. Right. And at some point you'll have created enough value for me where I will go way out of my way to make sure that your life gets substantially easier. Right, and they're like, yeah. And then they flake out and, like, you know, they just can't hang or can't handle it. And, you know, they don't show up or they don't come back after the first day, or, you know, I mean, we like to rouse the feathers a little bit on the first day and just be like really crazy and really extreme and, you know, just see how they handle like a really ridiculous sense of humor or just anything we can throw at them that's absolutely absurd. And if, you know, it just weeds them out real fast. And the people that do make it, though, they are a special breed. And those are the kind of people, at least I want on my team, and I want to be associated. And those are the kind of people we work with. And, you know, it's like, you expect greatness.
They're probably guys like you and me and Eyal, you know? And, you know, the fact that we are here talking to each other says that we all have the same passion and determination.
Yeah, it's not an easy ride at all. Like, you gotta grind ass. So what characteristics, Kyle, have you seen? Like, what's made people stand out? Like, think of the best interns you've ever had, and then think about the worst ones. Sure. And what's the difference in your eyes? What's your take?
The best ones are the ones willing to learn how you do things and not trying to implement their own way of doing things. Like, hey, I found an easier, quicker way to do it. You know, like, to be an intern, you really gotta learn the lay of the land when you're in a studio and just not cross lines.
I've seen that go sour many times.
Well, it's because you got to understand that if you're interning for somebody who is established, no matter what it is they ask for, there's a reason they're asking for it. And lots of guys who are established, they didn't get established by following all the rules. They got established generally because they do their own thing. I mean, they know how to record correctly, of course, but they kind of, you know, they take their own way of doing things. Like, take Joey for an example. Mm-hmm. He's a non-traditional engineer. Mm-hmm. He does things his own way. He kind of invented his own style. So if you're going to intern for someone like Joey, you're going to have to do things maybe a little differently than you learned in recording school, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. Or different, or whoever. When I was working under Jason Sukoff, like, there are things that I was asked to do that are different than what you will hear online. And it wasn't my place to question that, because there's a reason that these guys ask for it. And maybe if something isn't as efficient as some workflow tip that you learned in a course or something like that, doesn't fucking matter. Like, do what these guys are asking for and learn how they do things and make them happy. And if you have a better way of doing things, maybe once you've gained their trust, then suggested.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I think that's such a critical point. I mean, I'll use a story recently across the hall. The other producer that works with me, he's had several interns, and one in particular was always just mouthy because, you know, he actually listens to us and, you know, subscribes more to how we make records. And the guy across the hall, he's got his own way of doing it. Now, in his own right, he makes a lot of money. He's extremely successful in his market, and he does great. And yeah, you know, are there efficiency things and workflows and like the way he tunes vocals or edits drums that don't make sense to guys like us and how we do them? Absolutely. But does it work for him? He's got a thing. So, you know, like, are you going to come in as an intern and argue? So there was a guy who always came in and they'd always get into it. And it was just kind of comical to Joe and I, because Joe's my assistant, if you guys don't know, and also co-owns Drum Forge with me and Joe and I would always be laughing because Joe was like the most amazing intern I ever had, hence why he, you know, is a business partner now. And Joe was just reaming him out. He's like, dude, listen, you're not here to tell the dude across the hall what to fucking do. You're here to sit down, shut your mouth, and do exactly what he says. Don't question it. Don't argue. Don't get mad. Don't not show up. Don't screw him over and embarrass him in front of his clients. Come in and do your fucking job and shut your mouth, and you might learn something. And man, I just want to say, because I know he's going to listen to this podcast, there it is.
And you know what, dude? I could just imagine Joe doing that too.
It takes a lot to get Joe pissed off. I just want to put that out there. Like, he's really passive aggressive and really laid back. But man, when Joe gets mad, like for real mad, he gets really pissed. And, you know, I like it because every time one of my interns, like, I don't even have to discipline them. Like, there are new interns when they come in and they get out of line, like, he rips their fucking heads off. He's like, look at to me, look where I got, look what, you know, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I'm grinding it out every day. You don't see me complaining because I've got to edit, you know, 4,000 drum samples in the next 2 weeks, or I've got to do this or do that. Like, you know, I got to work 17-hour days. Not a single word comes out of my mouth. I sit here, I do my fucking job because I want to be great at this, and this is what I love doing. And you're here to do the same thing. I don't want to hear you complain or get frustrated because you couldn't figure something out. Use your mouth, ask questions, and that's how you be great at this. That's the first step.
Okay, I didn't know that Joe was your intern at first.
Yeah, he interned for me. Okay, here we go. This is a great case in point. Sorry, I'll let you guys do some talking here in a second. You're getting me fired up now with the hate and the fire is coming out. Joe interned for me for like a year and a few months for free, okay? Paid for his own gas. He didn't have a job at the time, so he was living off he had like $10,000 or $12,000 saved up, and he lived off that money very frugally and very intelligently, drove out 20 minutes each way a day, came and sat with me. Sometimes he would come in on the weekends at 5 a.m. to do bullshit tasks and stay there till midnight with me because that's what it took. And you know what? Then he became a mix assistant and he started helping me and Joey slam out gajillions of songs and just like, you know, doing what we do. And, you know, and now he owns a third of a company and he's doing fantastic. So there you go, awesome, man. I mean, like, that's the kind of guy I want on my team. I want somebody that I know if, like, I'm in, you know, another side of the planet and I don't have a cell phone and something goes wrong, I'm not going to lose a single thread of sleep over it because I know that guy is going to take care of shit. He's going to get it under control and it's not going to be a problem. So there it is. Like, it's not hard to succeed at doing this. It's not. You just have to put in the fucking work.
Absolutely. It just comes down to giving it 100% all the time.
There it is.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you have an assistant, like a paid assistant at this point?
Yeah, at this point I do, yeah.
And was he ever an intern?
Yeah, for about at least a year.
There you go. And what was it about him why did he graduate?
How did he graduate into getting paid?
Yeah.
He ruled. I mean, he's really good. His name's Colin Schwanke.
Hi, Colin.
Yep. You know, he had a lot to bring to the table. First of all, he has an ear. So he's musically trained. He was able to tune vocals and figure out the key of songs. And, you know, that's
had a brain.
What?
Had a brain?
Had a brain, yeah. Well, you know, he was just musically savvy, so that helped.
Yeah, it's important. Like, not a lot of guys have that coming in that will intern. Seriously. Like, no, like people will start interning for me. They're like, do you play any instruments? No. Do you sing? Do you know? What do you do? I make beats on Fruity Loops. What the fuck? You want to record bands?
Yeah. I mean, there are guys out there who can make it doing that, but just, depending on what kind of bands you're working with, like, sometimes you gotta know a little bit of music theory and, scales and finding keys of songs and stuff to tune vocals.
Yeah, that's important. I just wanted to reiterate that. It's so important.
Absolutely. And that's why, being in a band, we haven't really touched much on it, but my band brought me, because I was in a band throughout high school, and that's just kind of where I learned to be a musician and where I fell in love with it. But back to Colin really quick. So he was also a musician. So his pocket, he can put vocals in time, knows how to rock that. And then I remember the first time that he worked with me, one of the things that was really impressive when I was doing this Hit the Lights record, he took the tracks and added a bunch of like electronic stuff, synths, some effects, some swells, just some additional production just on his own time. It showed it to me, and I was kind of blown away, and I used a lot of it. And so he's been doing that kind of stuff for my records. If you listen to the State Champs record, there's a lot of synths and weird things happening. A lot of that was Colin.
Let me take a second to interrupt you and just say that those of you who don't know, Kyle is coming on Nail the Mix and actually doing a State Champs song called Secrets. So if you are not subscribed to Nail the Mix, go to nailthemix.com/statechamps and sign up. You will get the stems, raw stems, that is, not processed, raw stems for the song Secrets. You'll be able to enter in a mix competition with your mix where you can win a focal set of Elier headphones. That's $1,000 pair of headphones. You'll get to do a Q&A live call with Kyle where you can ask him anything you want about anything, all the way from what he's wearing to how he got State Champs to sound fucking incredible. And then at the end of the month, Kyle will be coming to my studio in Orlando and mixing the song for you live on camera and answering your questions. So with that, let's get back to talking about Colin and his awesome abilities to enhance your productions.
Can I interject rudely for 1 second and just say how excited I am that Kyle's going to be mixing? Like, dude, that mix you sent me the other day to listen to, it sounds fucking dope.
Yes.
I hit play and I'm like, this is awesome. I can't wait for Nail the Mix.
Wow.
So you guys,
Appreciate it.
Kyle's work is obviously fantastic, or we wouldn't be having him here and he wouldn't have had such an amazing career so far. So, anytime I feel like you have an opportunity to learn from something like that, you'd be foolish not to, because, man, like when I started doing this, there was nothing like that. Like, you couldn't just watch some badass dude mix a song from scratch, show you what they do, and interact and ask him questions. It was like impossible unless you had an internship. So
yeah, I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate it, and I know everyone else out there does too. It's super cool. Hey, thank you for having me.
Well, dude, we're stoked about it, and we're also really, really glad that it's not just another metal guy. Like, cool. we're glad that there's that we're going to be doing something in another genre, because we believe that even though we do a lot of metal, we want our audience and our students to really learn how to do all different genres maybe it's going to be rock and heavy stuff, and that's fine if that's your main thing, but you really should, if you want to do heavy music, you really should learn how to do pop punk, metal, some rock, like all the different flavors of it, because it will all influence your mix and production decisions in a good way.
Absolutely, yeah. I started doing a lot of heavy stuff. Back when I started, I was mainly doing heavy stuff, but I also had a thing for great vocalists and melodies and stuff, so
I'm with you on that.
So I eventually, actually, a cool, funny story, I think, is one record that I did recently was called Chunk No Captain Chunk. And before that,
We've had them on Nail the Mix, by the way.
Right. Bert is amazing, and so is his brother. They're such great guys and extremely talented. Yeah,
he can record great, too, and all that stuff. He's a really good producer. God.
Honestly, that was one of my favorite records to work on. It was just them two, and they're just such wise kids when it comes down to songwriting and producing and coming up with parts, and they have a really interesting way of writing music. So it was great to be a part of. So, but what I was getting at is there was a time before that record where I was like going back and forth from heavy stuff to poppy stuff. Like, for example, the Shai Hulud record that I engineered, the latest one, and then I did the Comeback Kid record. I did a handful of all this heavy stuff, and then I was going back and forth from a bunch of pop punk bands. Like, what was I doing? I gotta look at my website really quick, but I was just doing like, not heavy stuff. So anyways, but I was into it. I loved it. I loved going back and forth. And then, one day and I remember in the back of my head one day, I was like, man, I heard this band Chunk. I was like, dude, this is the perfect band for me, because they're so heavy and they have catchy hooks and melodies and stuff. And I'm like, I've got to work with this band. And then just somehow the stars aligned, and they were actually interested in working with me, and they hit me up after they had heard the Comeback Kid record that I did. And I was just unbelievably stoked. And I love that record.
So did they fly all the way from France and hang with you in LA for?
Sure did, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite Nail the Mixes. Joey did one of their records, and I wasn't involved. I didn't know Joey yet then. But so that was kind of my introduction to the band. But we had Bert on the Q&A call, and he's just struck me as super intelligent. And that song is so damn catchy.
Right. Well, which one? The new one?
Fantastic band.
No, it wasn't the new one. Which song is it again? I'm terrible with song names. I'm checking right now.
Cool. It's probably
all of them.
Bipolar Minds. It was off the record that Joey did, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Dude, let me tell you, man, I was so intimidated after knowing that they were coming from Joey Sturgis. And I was like, Jesus, dude, I really got to get my drum sounds down. And I mean, I still think like Joey's mix, at least drum wise, like slays pretty hard. But, I did my best to get there.
I heard yours. It sounds phenomenal.
Did great. It sounds fantastic.
Yeah, the song is called Restart. Yeah, Joey's a tough act to follow, but I think that your stuff rules, man.
Thanks, dude.
I don't think you got anything to worry about or had anything to worry about, but competition's a good thing, I think.
Absolutely. Oh, it's what it's all about. It's the only way you can get better. Even like, when I did that Comeback Kid record, I mean, look, like doing records like that are still till this day blow my mind that I actually did those records, and knowing that Comeback Kid did 3 records with Bill Stevenson, yep. I was shitting my pants. I was like, oh my God, what are these guys hearing that I'm doing? I didn't really get it. I mean, so at the time Andrew had liked this Shai Hulud record that I did, and anyways, my point is, like, the competition is you got to beat the last guy. You got to, not in a harmful way, but like you just got to do better than what everyone else is doing. Yeah.
I think this is a great topic because this kind of came up last night when I was on that live stream. Again, it won't be last night when people actually listen to this, but someone asked me about like, ego and how to control it and how to like talk to bands and things like that. And just in general. And one of the things I said is that, anybody that is good at this stuff obviously knows that they're good to some degree. You know what I mean? Like the competitive side of you, which is what I would call like a really positive ego, is like, you want to be the best that you can. You want to obviously do, if you pick up a cool record, you want to beat the guy before you, or at least do as good, or, not get totally smoked.
Right.
Like that's the kind of ego that you need to have, because that's what makes you competitive. That's what makes you get better. At the same time, you need that humility, because where people screw up is they take that head, oh, I'm great, I'm the best, I'm blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And reality is and none of us are like, we all have so many things individually that we have to work on that we're weak at, etc. So just having the mentality of like a perpetual student and always like trying to maintain that level of humility, no matter how good you are, how great your credits are, etc. So, it can kind of be like an ebb and flow. And when you're working with artists, sometimes you have to come in and have really strong confidence and ego, like, listen, I fucking know what's going on, you need to listen to me. And sometimes it is absolutely the wrong approach.
Right.
You got to read the situation and you got to know what you're getting into. But I think
but sometimes it's good though.
Yeah, it's like you need that driving force. You have to keep it in check and stay humble with it. But you need to have that competitive edge. It's so important.
Well, there's a reason for why restaurants in New York City are incredible and are better than the restaurants in Orlando. And it has to do with the fact that there's competition. Like, those guys have to be on their A+++ game at all times, or they're going to die. Whereas in Orlando, not necessarily. You can be a B+ in Orlando and be considered an A. Whereas in New York, you're an A- and you're already shitty. And so it's just important. To survive, you have to keep that edge. And I dig it when it can be sportsmanlike, to where you can be friends with your competitors and actually find ways to help each other out, because then you can learn from each other. And
absolutely,
I don't know. I come from an abundance mindset where I believe that there's enough for everybody to go around. There's enough seats at the table, and so we can all learn from each other, as opposed to the scarcity mindset where people act like dogs that are protecting their food bowls. So it's two completely different ways to look at the world, and they both might have some truth to them. But a lot of life is mindset. So if you look at it from an abundance mindset, that there's enough for anybody, competition actually becomes an opportunity to learn and to get better.
You know what's funny about that is sometimes your most brutal competitors at some point in your life can actually end up becoming some of your best friends and eventually like teammates. And you know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy how many people I think of going back where, I'd heard of that person and, we didn't get along. We competed for years, and now like we rent across the hall from each other and we're really good friends, and we don't compete at all. We throw work we help each other out.
Right.
So, just that's one of a million scenarios.
Totally. I think when it comes down to it, like in the end, when a band makes that decision of who they're going to work with, they're going to pick the right guy for the right project,
It's kind of like two guys going for the same girl or something. It's like, you're not going to sweet talk the girl. She's going to pick who's better for her, in her opinion. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yep.
You may as well just be okay with it. So let's switch gears and start and talk some more technical stuff.
Sure.
So just to break the ice, what's your favorite piece of gear in your studio right now? Like the one thing, and don't say a computer, but like what's your favorite piece of gear right now? And if you can't name one, name two.
Oh, geez. I mean, I love my Neve preamps.
That's good.
I think those are the bomb.
Those are really hard not to like, aren't they?
I love my Shadow Hills compressor.
Ooh, which one do you have?
All of which you guys are listening to right now. I'm talking into my Manly microphone, into the Neve, into the Shadow Hills compressor.
Which comp do you have from Shadow Hills?
Just the regular mono.
Like the Opto or the Vandergraaf or the mastering comp?
Not the mastering. I guess it's the Opto.
The Optograph. That is, dude, Kyle, that is one of my favorite fucking compressors. Yeah. I love it so much. I have the mastering comp, and part of it is the Opto section. And when I'm recording, I will record anything that I can possibly record through that, even if I'm not compressing, because I love how it sounds so much, and the transformer options are so sick. It's
Definitely.
such a beautiful piece of equipment.
It's really good. I like that, you can compress the shit out of things and it doesn't sound like it's being compressed, or it doesn't sound unnatural.
It's amazing how it does that. You look at it in the DAW, it's like a flat line, and you're like, oh, I crushed it, but then it's like a 2-to-1 ratio, and it's not really that compressed. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's sick. It's similar to like the transparent kind of design of like a Allen Smart C2 or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say those are my favorite pieces of gear.
Is your process mainly hybrid?
What do you mean by that?
Like, so when you're mixing, for instance, do you mix in the box, or do you use a lot of outboard inserts as well?
Yeah, I come out into the C2, Allen Smart C2.
Any other pieces in your chain? EQs, anything fun?
I have a summing box.
Oh, cool. What are you using?
Dangerous. Good stuff.
Yeah, you got the 2-bus, or the maybe have you seen the new one that came out with, like the 2-bus Plus?
Yeah, I have.
Dude, I wanted to try that so bad. It looks freaking sick. Like those features they've added. Oh man, I've got the Tonalux. I love that thing. The OTB16. I had the SSL Sigma, which also sounded great. Right. But it was just too much of a pain in the ass for me in terms of my workflow, because the DCA, like the digitally controlled analog, fader thing. It was amazing, and it was like the best thing to ever have in a summing box, except when my Ethernet didn't work at my new building and I couldn't port it over into my system. So I
think summing like helps a bunch. I think that it gives it a good stereo separation and makes it nice and wide, and
it's got that front to back thing too, you know, like that 3D. I picture it like when I listen to an all digital mix, I think of kind of like it looks like a flat sheet of paper if I visualize it in front of my face coming out of my speakers. Whereas like I see spheres and like I can see around instruments when I'm doing like a console or a summing mixer.
That's also when you take a hit of acid.
Yeah, I would say
put that on my list of things to try.
I would say if any listeners out there are trying to, you know, improve their mix game, getting some kind of summing unit, you know, it's an investment because you gotta buy an interface that has enough outs, and the I/O needs to be good quality for it to make sense. And it's a lot of fun taking it out. You have a lot more headroom. You can make much more dynamic mixes. Things tend to not be as muddy, I think.
Yeah, it's worth a try. You got to try it. Now, we'll establish one little caveat to that.
It ain't going to fix shitty EQ.
Yeah, it ain't going to fix shitty monitoring. It ain't going to fix the fact that, you know, you're monitoring in like a bedroom versus, you know, like have those important ducks in the row first. But you get to a point, you know, where you're starting to get good and your fundamentals are down. Then it's worth trying a summing mixer because, you know, it's not for everybody, but if it's for you, you'll open it up, you'll use it, and you'll fall in love with it, and you'll be like, how the hell did I mix without this my whole life?
Right, totally. It's definitely a thing that I like.
At what point in someone's development do you think that they should start looking into things like a summing box, a summing mixer?
I think when they're, you know, making enough money to afford it, really. But then again, I mean, sometimes, like if you're a fan of wide sounding records and, you know, the left and right being super huge, and then you want to start getting out of the box and using some outboard gear. If you're a fan of, you know, heavy, narrow mixes, which isn't a bad thing. Like I think a lot of in the box records a lot of heavy records sound great in the box because it's probably a bit warmer and bigger sounding down the center. Does that make sense at all?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it comes down to a preference thing. Did I answer your question?
Well, you said that once they can afford it, which to me means it's not a frivolous thing to buy.
No, yeah. So, yeah, that's kind of my point is if you can afford it, try it out and see if it's something that you like, you know. But that's kind of an interesting thing about this show is that, you know, everyone's telling how they do things, and maybe some people might feel threatened or something, like giving away their secrets or the stuff that they use, but it really all comes down to someone's ear and preference.
You know, it's funny you say that because when I've been doing the audio education thing for going on 4 years now. Had my first Creative Live was in 2013. And we're now in the beginning of year 4, and it's been going great. And when I first started, this doesn't happen so much anymore, or I don't even hear about it anymore. But when I first started, I faced a lot of resistance because that's when I was making records all the time and involved with records, whether I was producing or engineering or mixing or mix engineering or assisting. Like I was handling all the roles on between 5 and 8 records a month for years. And a lot of people started to hate me for this, saying that I'm giving away the keys of the castle or giving the secrets away, but I just don't agree with that. Like, there are no secrets to give away. All we do is teach concepts and workflows. We can't give you our ears.
You can watch Nail the Mix, right? And you can watch a lot of really awesome mixers now, and we have so many cool guests coming and things like that. You know, there's going to be a wealth of excellent people to learn from, and you can come in and watch Nail the Mix, but it isn't going to do the fucking work for you. Like,
right.
You can sit there and watch Kyle mix a song, and you're not going to be able to mix like Kyle. Like, you have to do the work. You have to develop the ear. You can pick up workflow. You can pick up, concepts. I always try to put it like this. I think we're teaching people how to solve problems. Now, I feel like it's an uphill battle because as much as I want it to be like that, and I have this idealistic fantasy that we are teaching people how to solve problems because that's how we're approaching it, everybody's just like, yo, where's the preset? And you're like, dude, you're missing the point. There's no preset, man. Like, come on. Like, I use this compressor on a lot of different shit because it solves a particular problem and it's fast and efficient. It fits into my workflow, but I can use any other compressor and would gladly do so. It doesn't matter. The point is the concept, not the tool. So just because I used L1 on 400 times in that mix doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, for sure. I remember back in the day, like when the Pintado place started up, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy is doing what he's doing. And then, so, that happened, and then I think I saw a couple other things, and I was kind of like watching all these people do their mixes. I even watched the Andrew Wade thing, and I'm kind of like realizing that all of us, we are using the same tools. It's the plugins, it's everything's in this digital domain, which kind of puts everyone at a similar playing field, and what sets yourself apart is just how you use the tools, really.
And the cool thing is, by watching a lot of different people work, you're going to develop and take different things out of those, so like you'll see somebody do something like Andrew or Kyle or, Eyal or whoever, they're going to do something and you're like, oh, that's cool. I've never really thought about approaching it like that, so I'm going to try playing with that in my workflow. And it may not port one-to-one into your own workflow. It may be a little bit weird, but because of that, it inspires something. You're like, whoa, I've never thought about it like this. And then you end up, originally thinking you were going to come in at point A, but you end up at D, and D is actually a really cool thing, and you're like, wow, this is really awesome. And then it becomes like a part of your workflow, and then it helps your sound. So we're like, by all of us doing this and everybody sharing their knowledge and information, we're actually all getting better at this, and all of us are learning, and hopefully it helps progress along the industry, because since the big studio model has come down, there's just so much of a lack. You don't have like the great mentorships and internship opportunities that used to be available, where you could go in and watch some amazing A-list dude rip out mixes all day and absorb that like a sponge. So I think this is probably the next closest thing possible without having to leave your house.
Oh, dude, you guys got the coolest thing going on, for sure.
I agree.
That's why I'm here, man. It's cool.
Let's talk some more tech stuff.
Cool.
Let's get specific. Like,
cool.
Tracking heavy rhythm guitars. What's your preferred method?
Keep it super simple. I've got this guitar cabinet that I really love. That I thought sounded great. I heard it in Guitar Center. It's a Marshall hand-wired thing.
What's in it?
So it's got these hybrid speakers that I asked the guy at the store, I'm like, why does this cabinet sound so good? What's in here? Is it vintage 30s or is it greenbacks? And he's like, it's neither. It's actually like this hybrid thing called... I don't even remember what he said.
Is it the G12H30s maybe, which is like a hybrid greenback?
Yeah.
Because I have a pair of those that I wired into a cabinet, and I use those a lot on a lot of records. Okay, for example, when I did Vinyl Theater, that was the guitar tone.
It's got to be something like that, because it's not a vintage 30 and it's not a greenback.
Yeah, but is it like a hybrid of the two? Because that's what it's called.
That's what he told me. Yeah.
Yeah, G12H30s, I believe, is what they're called. By Celestion. That's a really cool speaker because it's got a lot of great characteristics of both, and for pop punk and stuff like that, it's a great sound.
Totally, it sounds super. I can use it on heavy stuff, and I can use it on any record. It just sounds a lot more clearer and crisper than just a straight like Mesa cab with vintage 30s, but it still sounds heavy. So anyways, I got a 421 and a 57 on that, and I blend those together using my API 3142s.
Do you have any phase issues ever?
No, I just throw them up, and if it sounds good, it's good. I don't overthink the phase. I just throw them up like not dead center, but in between the center and the outside, right on the corner of that circle. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Yes.
And then you blend them, and then I throw that through my Shadow Hills, and I kiss it. A little trick I learned from Dan Corniff, if he's listening.
We love Dan. Dan's actually been
man.
on here twice.
I know, I've heard it. My band did a record with Dan and David Bendith. So
Dan is the shit.
and he's extremely sweet, nice guy. We keep in contact, and he's just a really helpful guy. Not really going to meet anyone as nice as him, probably.
Hopefully he'll come on Nail the Mix.
Oh, I hope he does, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so go on.
But he'll probably need his SSL, right?
That's fine.
We'll go to him.
Right, that'd be sick. So
We have cameras.
So yeah. So anyways, that's my chain for the guitars. Well, I use these really expensive cables that cost like $100 each, which just sound better than regular cables. What do? I split it with the J87, and then I'll have the DI for editing purposes. Very rarely will I reamp.
Why is that?
I mean, for sure, I think that there's quality loss when you reamp something.
Yep.
So you can always do it, but you're going to lose something. It's not going to be much and not really detectable, but I think if you nail the tone right from the beginning, that's really what you want to do.
You're absolutely right. And it's funny, the guy who I talk about this the most often with is Andrew Wade. Man, I have always felt like something in reamping, I don't know, there's something gets lost in translation.
There is something. It's hard to quantify scientifically. Sorry to piss anybody off by saying that, but it's real. Like, not that it's a problem, but
Right. You can't get around it. You will certainly have a crisper, cleaner sound if you're just like right into the amp or, into your splitter. Even the splitter adds a little bit of, loss of something. But anyways, I mean, reamping, I'll reamp like lead guitars and shit, like if I want to try some weird thing. But yeah. Oh, you have a Bogner Ecstasy. I mean, that was on the main rhythms for most of my records. And then for clean and mid-tones, I use this amp called the Divided by 13.
Let's talk about your Bogner Ecstasy for a second. I have one of those. It's one of the... I have sold a lot of my gear and kept some of... I've only kept the stuff that I think you shouldn't ever sell. So I've had the Bogner Ecstasy for 10 years now, and I would never sell that thing. One of the best $3,000 I've ever spent. And,
Stop making me want one. I hate you guys.
Dude, but here's the thing about it. Like, you can get really bad tones with it, too, because there's so many options that you can...
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's not just, like, one of those amps that's got, like... like a 5150 block letter where it's kind of like, the settings and it doesn't do much else, but it does that one thing great. Ecstasy is
You're going to give us that preset or what?
it's like 3 amps in one. Like, tell us more about like what you like about it and how you figured it out and what channels you like.
Sure. I mean, what I like about it is that like the EQs are so powerful. Like, when you use like an EQ, like a Neve or something, and you twist the knob, and it's just like, holy shit, like, look at that, listen to that get so much brighter. Or the bass is like, I guess, I don't know how to explain it. It's like very dynamic, the EQ. Mm-hmm. So you can find like all these different ranges of guitar tone, really, and it sounds heavy as fuck, like enough gain. You've got enough gain for, like, you have way too much gain with that kind of amp, and so I don't know. That's what I like about it. It's just powerful, versatile, and powerful.
Do you like one of the channels better than the other, by any chance?
Not really. I mean, the green, the blue, and the red channel are super similar. Just the red sounds like, crazy heavy. And then the blue is like, I would probably use that on like a pop punk record. If I was doing the chunk record, I had it on the red. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think the green channel is beautiful.
What? That's the clean one.
No, I said beautiful for cleans.
Oh, yeah.
I moments.
I tend to not use that channel because I use my Divided by 13. It has like it's a lot less power on the amp, and it has like a really sick reverb and stuff, so I actually rarely use the green channel.
I've heard of Divided by 13. It's one of those cool companies.
Yeah. Bogner's
You guys
cool
are
as fuck, too.
posers using clean tones, man. I only use red channels, and that's it. And if it ain't metal, it ain't worth recording.
Except for when it is.
You want to move on to bass or something?
Yeah, let's move
Or
on
keep
to
talking
bass.
guitar amps.
Let's do it.
Both.
We don't like bass players because Eyal and I are both guitar players. You play at all?
Yeah, I'm mainly a bass player.
All
For
right.
sure. I was a
No,
bass
you want
player
to
Start a
back in
band
the-
now.
Yeah.
We got a full band here. So.
I gotta say that I play guitar, but I prefer playing bass in the studio a lot more. It's a lot more fun.
Do you? Oh, yeah.
If you guys want to gang up on me, that's cool. You
Well,
know,
it's
like-
that's the number one instrument I end up replacing people with, and it's just fun. But yeah,
It is fun playing bass on records.
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. So, all right,
Absolutely.
let's talk about your preferred method for tracking bass.
Sure. Bass is the hardest thing to track for some reason for me. Like, I usually end up like not liking the amp sound I got or some shit like that. And I'll use a lot of the DI or I'll reamping it. I could tell you my favorite chain. It's not what I own right now. The best tone I've gotten is just, hands down, like the Ampeg, either the big classics or the vintage VRs, vintage reissues. Sounds sick. Putting a P bass through that into, a good cabinet, into a good microphone. I think a lot of it has to do with the next stage of the chain, which would be a Neve preamp, which is always good, or I actually have these Burl preamps, which are super similar to Neves. And then you take that and then pop it into like an LA2A. I think an LA2A is the best for bass recording. And then, so that would be the amp signal. And then the DI, I would also use the either that Avalon thing into like an 1176 or the B1 Burl into like the 1176 again, or I guess I like the Burls the best for bass DI.
Have you ever tried their converters?
The Bomber B2?
Yeah.
I've been in the studio with it. They sound fucking awesome.
I was going to say, if you haven't tried that and you like the preamps, man, do yourself a favor and just do it. Just go try it. Like, I have a mothership that'll show you how much I like it. Yeah, I had to literally extract a kidney with a sharp object and then sell it on the black market to buy it because I've got like 12 in and 16 out. But dude, that running into a summing mixer, it's pretty badass. It's the thing about the Burls, like the first time I ever recorded a guitar with them, I was just like, dude, that is the bottom end I've always wanted to hear on a guitar my entire life. Like, it just had this tightness and size that I wasn't getting with any other converter I'd ever tried. And I shot out a lot of them when I got the Bomber, because I got the Bomber and just based off of hype, like, this is supposed to be the shit. Let's see if it's any good. And it was so the shit that I was like, all right, I bought it, then sold it a year later and bought a mothership and just said, screw it, all other converters, I don't even care anymore.
That's amazing.
Worth it.
Yeah.
Worth it.
Awesome. I have recorded with a Burl mothership before, and it was sick. It sounded really good. A lot more warmer and bigger sounding than just a regular Pro Tools system.
Lots of guys that come on never record bass amps anymore. I know you're talking about Burls now and not the amp, but do you ever just go DI now?
I do sometimes when I'm being lazy.
Good answer.
Yeah, but no, ideally, I think having a really good amp sound is what you want to do. But my point about what I was saying earlier is it's hard to get a great bass amp sound, and that's why there's so many simulators that can beat it right now, currently. I think using like a DI with like that CLA bass plugin, I've used that on a bunch of records, But if I can nail a sick bass tone and it sounds good and usable, I'll use it. I think on the State Champs that was not just DI. That was my my chain that I recorded the best I could into a Neve, into like, what did I have at the time? 1178 on the amp or something. You just gotta go after that amp tone and really work it. Like new strings, make sure the bass player's playing right. Make sure the amp is really good and the bass is set up well.
What about the microphone?
The microphone, What about it? Like, what did I use?
Well, yeah, like what are your go-tos for tracking bass?
Some kind of fat kind of microphone. Currently have this blue mouse FET thing that sounds really good. And I also have this Heel like PR40 or something like that. Both of those work well. Those are inexpensive mics that work well on low end kind of stuff.
And when you're miking up a bass cab, we talked about miking a guitar cab. How do you go about it with a bass cab? Like, do you get right up on it, or some guys like to give it a little distance?
Yeah. I mean, I hate muddy sounding bass. I really love clear bass where the bottom end sounds super pillowy and clear, and the top end is like nice and crispy. So I tend to just put it like directly in front, dead center on the speaker of a bass cabinet. Because it's always going to be, there's going to be plenty of low end, but it's grabbing that brilliance and the brightness of a bass guitar that's always really difficult.
And you can get plenty of low end from the DI anyways if you need to.
Yeah, that too.
Do you ever blend them?
Yeah, of course.
So do you deal with phase issues there ever?
I usually look inside Pro Tools and line up the waves if they're out.
Got it.
You know, you get the phase as best you can coming in, and which is usually just flipping one of the phase switches. But if you really want to get in there, like during mix time, you know, you go through and zoom in on those waves and match them up, scoot them over.
Get it right.
Yeah. Write down how many samples you moved it, and then you do that to every song, you know? Mm-hmm. Or you can use those that in-phase plugin from Waves. Super helpful.
I've used that one, and then also there's Auto Align by Sound Radix. I like that one a lot, too.
Cool. I haven't used that.
Well, it's really good. It's a lot like the Waves one, but it's better. The Waves one kind of gets a little confusing to me at times. The Sound Radix one is really great. But then UAD makes one as well, which is it's a recreation or an emulation of the Little Labs in Phase Tool.
Nice.
In my opinion, that's the best one.
That's cool. So the speaking of UAD stuff, you know, I've never had a chance to use that stuff.
It's phenomenal.
And I don't know, like, should I trust you, or should I trust all these people? You know, like, are you sure? Because it's fucking expensive, man. You know.
Well, there's a second part to what I was about to say.
Okay.
It's phenomenal, but the bang for the buck is arguable.
Right. It seems like it.
Yeah, that's the issue, because we all know that you can make a great record with all stock plugins or the basic Waves plugins from 10, 15 years ago and be fine, right? So it's not like you need the most incredible plugins ever to make a great record. So the question is, do you really feel like spending the money on something that you get limited instances of that you don't necessarily need? And then in that case, it is questionable and it is arguable. However, they do sound great. And so I know some guys like Taylor Larson who love them and use them religiously, and his stuff sounds incredible and he swears by it. And people love them. So
I have heard, you know, Neil Avron is one of my favorite mixers of all time. I've been following him for like 10, 15 years.
Oh, he is sick.
Yeah. He's like kind of my biggest influence when it comes to mixing. I hear that he's like in the box using UAD plugins. And his shit sounds unreal.
They are great plugins, and especially, you know, if you're a really good mixer and you're using them, cool. But yeah, cost per, you know, the bang for the buck thing is definitely, you know, if you're worried about price, maybe they're not worth it. I don't know, but they do sound great. It
seems though like maybe if someone's like a professional mixer, they could and should look into that kind of stuff. You know, if they're making enough money to justify it is kind of what I'm getting at.
If you're making enough money to justify it, I say why not check it out. You can always return it. It's like the plugins aren't going to work without the hardware, so you know you just return the hardware. But you could trust me on the fact that they sound great. Not just me, like trust a lot of people. But
how can a plugin sound so much better than a? You know, to me, like a plugin, all plugins almost sound, it's like they don't really do anything. It's just a little tool to change shit around, you know?
I know what you're saying. I think that what they say, and I'm I'm not a programmer or anything like that. So
I can enlighten you guys on this, but so go ahead, just finish and I'll weigh in.
They say that the algorithms are, if they didn't use the hardware, they would bog the computer down too much because they're that much more complex than, say, like the Waves algorithms or whatever. And those more complex algorithms apparently get you a better quality of sound, and so they need the hardware to be able to run it so that it doesn't kill your computer.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's very true. I don't want to give away something really cool and innovative that I think we're going to be doing on the Drumforge end at some point in time. I sit across from a programmer every single day, and he is a freaking genius, like absolutely one of the smartest programming people I've ever met. I feel like he's like the next Fabrice Gabriel. The guy's brilliant. And we have a lot of conversations because we come up with really crazy ideas and try to solve problems. We're like, what if we had a tool that did this or that? How would we do it? Or how would we approach this? So we've had a lot of like good chats at the bar, sitting there and nerding out about like, we could run it off this and do it like this and blah, blah, blah. No one's ever done this before and we could do this. And so I don't want to encourage all the other companies out there, so I'm just going to shut my mouth. But basically, yes, there is a lot of truth to what they're doing because running software off of your CPU and RAM, you can only get so much power. So having an external card is great. The problem is if you're a guy like me and you have original UAD1, like that was badass 10 years ago, and now it's like laughable how how not powerful those cards are. So, the technology gets dated really quickly when you're doing that. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like having all of that processing power offline frees up your computer, and you can really get much higher, more realistic modeling. But modeling and realism, that's a really complicated topic. And I hope I'm not going off topic too much.
It's fine.
No, you're good.
But modeling is something I've had many, many long conversations about. And I'm not a programmer, so don't quote me. I'm just kind of like the horse's ass here as opposed to the mouth. You're getting it from somebody way, way smarter about this shit than me, funneling through me. So what I wanted to say is I was talking with my programmer the other day, and we were talking about, how do you model things accurately? And one of the ways they do that is through a circuit simulation software called Splice. The problem with Splice is it's way fucking out of date, and it needs to be rewritten, and you can model things at the component level. Another way is, you can run tones and take measurements and et cetera through the gear and run sweeps and get a slightly less accurate, picture based off of, mathematics and algorithms and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but the point of this all is the technology has a long ass way to go. And, there's some really creative ways to get around it in theory that I've heard, but it's an issue of sitting down and having those types of people implement that sort of design in real life. So that's kind of like the layman's understanding of programming. So like the technology is cool and it's great that they have all these accelerated cards, but the method, the bus is still kind of broken. You know what I mean? Like you're still taking the bus, but you want to drive a car, if that makes sense.
Got it.
That spoiler you put on the Honda might make it a little more aerodynamic, but it's still just a Honda.
Yeah, exactly. Like plugins are badass. They're great. Are they going to model hardware one-to-one? Not yet. We got a ways to go from what I understand. And there's some things we can't even frickin' measure yet. We were talking to Gregory Scott about this. So that was a really fascinating conversation.
That's the dude, the UBK guy. Makes the incredible clariphonic EQ and all kinds of stuff.
Awesome. So like the plugins are really good, but I have the hardware. So like when you compare it, you're like, man, there's just that extra sauce. But hey, man, I'll take the plugin any day. I love it, and I'm so happy I have a hardware one. So there you go.
Sick.
So all right, let's talk about tracking drums. Do you have any preference in your setup for drum tracking or mic placements? Or?
Oh boy, I love drum tracking. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Same here.
I think. When it comes down to preference, I mean, you always prefer, the most expensive shit, but sometimes you just can't get your hands on it. So I'm not really going to get into that too much. But, I think when it comes down to recording the drum, the drum itself needs to be in good shape. It needs to be tuned really well. You got to have a really good snare, and your cymbal choices is very, key. Make sure nothing's broken and make sure you got a solid set. One interesting thing about drum recording too is like the size of cymbals is kind of a big deal.
Oh yeah.
To get like a great sounding drum performance basically, cuz like literally the size of a cymbal will, it should change per tempo, because like the simple fact of like the bounce back on a cymbal is super important. Like if you're recording a fast song, you can't have huge cymbals or else it's not going to come back in time and it's just not going to sound in time. So
also the thickness.
Sure, yeah.
You want thinner cymbals on faster things in my experience.
Absolutely. And if it's a big slow song, like use a big cymbal. So it's like, so you get a lot of decay and it makes sense at like a tempo, like just slow, But making sure the drummer is prepared and plays well to a click, I think is really important. Do you want to talk about gear?
Let's talk just the technical process of recording drums.
Sure.
And actually, as a matter of fact, when I get asked about this, the first shit I talk about is the drummer and like those types of things. Because I feel like tuning, the drummer, the sticks, all that stuff, that's like number one priority. All those things. That's like, you get all that shit right. The rest should be pretty easy.
Yeah. It's the simple things like sticks, like you're talking about.
Isn't it always the fundamentals though in anything, whether it be producing, mixing, songwriting, engineering?
Well, the thing is with drums, you've got so many moving pieces. You have like so many pieces that like you could fuck it all up by like getting all the tuning wrong, for instance.
Well, tuning something the right way, quote unquote, is I don't really tune like that because I don't think there's a right way to tune something because it's always subjective. I just tune the drums to how I like drums to sound, which is big and wet and roomy. So I'll make my shit like ring out for as long as I can because I know that when I'm mixing, I'm gonna mix the drums with as much crack and compression as like there's gonna be plenty of crack when it comes down to mixing. So if my drums are wet and ringy and long and decay, it's gonna be okay, and it's just gonna add to the flavor of the drum sound. That's my thing. Another good trick is lug locks on a snare.
Oh yeah.
Keeping the snare in tune throughout a song is super key.
Dude, I put those on the toms too.
Nice, yeah.
Top and bottom.
Sure. It's really simple. If you want a good natural sound, like a dynamic sound, you got to make sure you record the drums correctly. And if your shit's falling out of tune and the drums kit sounds like shit, like you're gonna want to use samples, and it's gonna kind of lose. You're gonna come up with a sound that is extremely common these days, which is very sampled and fake, which isn't really gonna set you apart, isn't gonna set your recordings apart, So I think that's a big thing, is getting great natural drum sounds, for sure.
Well, I think that if a band, I'll say that some bands don't give a shit about real, but when a band says that they do, we always have the conversation about, well, then you better realize that we are going to take some time up front getting this right, and you're going to be paying for this drum tech, Matt Brown, to come in, and we're going to be changing heads a lot, and you're going to be not playing a lot because he's going to be tuning a lot, and we're going to be doing this right. Otherwise, we're going to be using lots of samples, and either way, I can make it sound great, but if you want to go the natural way, which I prefer, we got to do this right.
Right.
No way around it.
And you still using a sample on a real kit is totally fine. Like,
yeah, of course.
I'll use samples on every record. Oftentimes, though, it's like a sample that I took from the kit, especially with the toms. On the State Champs record, they'll have a snare sample in the session, and it's the snare that I took. So that kind of helps you give like a unique sound, which I think has helped me set myself apart from other producers, and stuff like that.
So Joel,
how you doing?
Good. Do you want to do a quick rapid fire round?
I kind of feel like we covered a lot of rapid fire, but
we didn't do it on drums or vocal.
All right, so I'm gonna yell off an instrument or something attached to a vocal cord, and you can tell me what you use on it, how you record it, or how you mix it, whatever you want. It's up to you. If you don't want to talk about it, you can be like, you can just pass on it and conceal. So, all right. screaming, heavy background vocals.
SM7. You said screamy background vocals or just screamy vocals in general?
Yeah, like screaming background. I would punt on the question and just send a real softball because everybody's going to be all excited and salivating. And they're going to be like, oh, come on, dude. I just like to mix it up sometimes.
Yeah, totally. I mean, never use an expensive mic on a loud screamer because you're just bound to ruin it. I've done that plenty of times. So, an SM7 into, my chain, which I talked about before, the Neve into the Shadow Hills. Brighten it up because that SM7 is going to be a little dull.
Snare top.
57 into a Neve preamp into a distressor.
Overheads. Usually
end up with 414s. Love Neves, but I also think that, what is that? Great River stuff sounds super, just like the Neve style. I think you could use like a Great River, a Burl, or a Neve for overheads.
Okay, singing vocals for a female singer.
I love this Manly that I have. I bought it because it's super bright and crisp, and you don't have to, add a lot of top end to it. And it's actually an affordable mic. I would say that the Manly reference is a great choice.
Acoustic guitar.
I'll usually just throw my, my Manly on it. Or another one that I really like is the KM184.
Oh,
just
right on. Yeah, those are...
Great mic.
Yeah, just something. I really love clarity, so whatever I can get to that point is what I'll go after.
And last but not least, kick in, meaning like what would you put on your, the inside of your kick drum?
Anything really, but I usually end up with the one of those B52s or the AKG 112.
Dude, have you ever tried a Beta 52 on the beater side of the head?
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Beta 52.
Yeah, I could never get it like on the front, on the inside, to sound good. But I don't remember. I was doing a drum forge session somewhere, and the dude was like, "Dude, why don't you put that mic on the backside?" I've never tried that mic. And I threw it on the backside, and I go, listen to playback.
Near
I was
his
like,
foot?
holy shit, yeah. Holy
that's weird.
Shit, what a difference, man.
I haven't tried that.
You got to try it. It's
cool.
Worth experimenting with. And if it totally sucks, just send me a very angry email and tell me how disappointed you are. But when I tried it, I was like, holy shit. Now it sounded super badass. Where normally
really?
It was kind of like dark and I don't know. I think I tried it at your place, Eyal, too. But man, like when
I'll bet.
Tried it on the backside of the kick by the pedal, I couldn't believe how sick it sounded. It made it sound more like a D6, like more like aggressive.
D6s are fun.
I love them.
So I don't know. It's worth trying.
I remember. I mean, a while back I had a D6, and it's just crazy that like those microphones sound like they have an EQ on it.
Yep, I use them on toms.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, bottom tom mics are especially cool with the D6. I just want to. That's something I learned from Eyal. He had a D6 on a bottom of a floor tom, or maybe it was a sub kick. I don't know. It was on the bottom of something. And I was like, dude, that is the sickest shit. And I went home and I immediately tried it. And I was like, oh, wow, I need like 10 more D6s because, man, they really are cool on the bottom of toms.
Absolutely. Good microphone for sure.
I like them on top, too.
They are sick there as well.
All right. So we have a couple questions from the crowd.
There's a crowd?
Yeah, there's a crowd. Well, not right now, but they're in our Facebook group, and they asked some questions.
Oh, cool.
So
we could be mean and make them wait to the Q&A.
Well, that's why I'm not going to ask a crazy amount of these, but
no, bring it all. I'm ready.
But a couple of them we should go for. So here's one from Luke Mansell Ward, which is, what are your go-to tips for getting the best take out of a vocalist, and what's your decision process when deciding how to produce a vocalist? For example, which sections you double track and why?
Okay, I mean, when it comes down to that, I love dynamic mixes and production, so I'm gonna try and be as creative as I can when it comes to doubles and harmonies. So for example, if it's a verse, if it's intimate, you're not gonna double it, you know what I mean? And if you're gonna have a harmony, try and keep it mono. So when like the chorus hits, you can spread it with a double harmony, or sometimes you can even quad a vocal track in a chorus. I think just being dynamic with your selection, when it just how you want to build the song and how you want the final product to be.
I think that a lot of people overthink these things, and it just makes a lot of sense to follow the curve of the song in ways that it makes sense. Like I've seen guys who double all kinds of weird shit, but when it comes down to it, I really think that it's just how do you want the vocals to feel at this part? Do you want them to feel huge, or do you want them to feel intimate? Do you want this word to jump out more or not?
Exactly. Well said. Absolutely. I learned a lot from this guy, Matt Fox, in a band called Shai Hulud, because we were doing a hardcore record. I'm like, hey man, don't you like want to double everything because it's a hardcore band? And he's like, no, like what are you talking about? And what he was after when we were doing vocals, we were recording Chad Gilbert, and I actually wasn't producing the record. That's why I didn't really have a say in any of this, but I was recording it. So his thing was just trying to get the right emotion from a take. And even though he's screaming, there's a lot of emotion coming out of it. And sometimes when you double something, you'll lose the emotion, really.
It's kind of the same thing as when you quad guitars, you'll lose tightness.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean you don't double things. That means you just got to be selective. You know what I mean?
Speaking of Shai Hulud, next question is from Jack Hartley, which is, what was your approach to editing and mixing Reach Beyond the Sun by Shai Hulud? That record sounds really organic, yet still modern, punchy, and tight.
I mean, a lot of it came down to the recording, though, too. So I'll start with the drums. I remember, first of all, the drummer is incredible. His name's Matt Covey. I remember we had a lot of fun with the drum tones. We changed the snare drum for a lot of the songs. So there's like 6 different snares, and I changed it depending on the tempo of the song. If it was super fast, I would crank the snare up and make sure there's like no ring. If it was kind of slow, I would make sure that the snare was super wet and ringy. When it came down to mixing, God, I don't know, man. I just wanted the drums to slam. I wanted the vocals to be super up front and in your face. And it's all about the guitar riffs. So you kind of got to make sure your tones and when it comes down to editing, I don't know. I think I gridded the shit out of a lot of the stuff, but some of the stuff I left a little loose. It kind of just depended. But I would say like 80% of the guitars are gridded, and but it's very raw. Like everything on that record is very raw sounding. So we tried to, but raw in a tonal way, not like a performance way, if that makes sense.
So gridded yet natural. That sounds crazy, and I want to hear it.
Gridded but natural. I mean, I think that I tend to, a lot of my records, most of it will end up on the grid and being nudged, but I think it more has to do with like the dynamics of the performance or the tone that makes it feel like it's natural.
I also will put a lot of my records on the grid, and what I'll do is I'll change the grid to speed up and slow down in places where I think it should. So like I've gone to the point of like speeding up fills or like slowing down fills. Like if it's like, you know, if it's say that you got a fast part and you end it with triplet fill going into a slow part, like whatever. Now slow down the tempo, and have lots of tempo changes in the song, but have everything on grid still so that it's perfectly in time, but the tempo ebbs and flows the way that music wants to ebb and flow.
Sure, yeah. The Shai Hulud record is, I mean, there's so many tempo changes on that record, it's not even funny. You should give it a listen. I hope that answer was good.
The answer is good. And I think that a lot of people, you know, when they ask something like that, like, how did you make it sound punchy and tight? And it's like, well, I mean, first of all, the music has to be written in a way to where it can be punchy and tight, right? So like you said, it goes back to the recording, and you recorded it in a way that lends itself to that. And then, but if they didn't write music that was meant to sound that way, it wouldn't sound like that. That's it. So it kind of goes back to the basics, the arrangement, the recording, and then, I mean, you answered it. You said you edited to the grid the parts that needed to be super tight and super punchy, and then you left the other parts alone that needed to have a more quote-unquote organic-y kind of feel, and then you said that the tones are where the most of the organic element comes from, not so much the timing.
Yeah, I would say the tones and the performance for sure. Because like you can move shit around and throw it on the grid, but it's still going to be the same part. You know what I mean? And you do got to edit it the right way and make sure that it's just feels good, really.
I think that that's one of the main things that people need to understand about editing drums is why you don't just let some jackass do it. Is because you need to have, because like anybody, not anybody, but let's just say that like just learning how to put things on a grid, like robotically, is a lower level skill than learning how to edit drums musically. So editing drums musically involves putting things on the grid, but you have to have the musical judgment to be able to know when things are going to be 100%, when they're going to be 90%, when the snare's got to be a little behind the beat, when to leave it alone. Like all these things, you got to know, you got to like feel these things and hear them, and so it's much harder. So here's the last question.
Good question.
Thanks. Well, it wasn't my question, but here's the last question. This is from our drum tech, and Matt Brown, who is drum genius and one of the best engineers I've ever met. And he asked, what's it like being named after both members of the greatest band ever to exist, Tenacious D?
Oh, God.
I'm sure you've heard that before.
I get that a lot.
I'm sure you do.
The only answer to that is it's fucking awesome.
Yeah. Like he said, it is awesome.
What else is there to say?
You know what's funny is in my background on my desktop is Jack Black staring me in the face.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that you've been hearing that for a while.
Yeah, I have for sure.
So, well, Kyle, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
It's been great talking to you. Normally our podcasts are only like an hour long, and I bet that we could have talked for another 2 hours. So
for sure.
It's been awesome, and I'm very, very much looking forward to the Q&A and doing the whole Nail the Mix thing, hanging out in Orlando. And
me too.
It's going to be sick.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And if anyone has any questions, just reach out to me on that forum.
Cool.
The Unstoppable Recording Machine Podcast is brought to you by Focal Audio, the world's reference speaker. For over 30 years, Focal has been designing and manufacturing loudspeakers for the home, speaker drivers for cars, studio monitors for recording studios, and premium quality headphones. Visit Focal.com for more information. To ask us questions, make suggestions, and interact, visit urm.academy/podcast and subscribe today.